Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Avodah Zarah, Daf Lamed Gimel. We are going to begin on Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top with the words Tanu Rabban. Says the Gemara, Oivid Kechavim Hahoylech Lirid. So let's say you have a Oivid Kechavim that's going to Yerid, which is some type of marketplace. Ben Belicha Ben B'Chazara Mutter. Whether he is going there or coming back, the din is that we are lenient. As Rashi says, this is a shukshul of kachavim. Miu of kachavim ki ozol was schayru di ozol. It's really mostly just for business transactions, and therefore you're allowed to engage in business with him. Yisrael hayel chirid. However, Yisrael who goes to this marketplace of idol worshippers, so bahalicha mutter. So we said before that when he's going, it's allowed, because even to go to a place of idol worship itself, maybe he'll do tshuva. However, b'chazar aser. So ma'ishna Yisrael the b'chazar aser. So why is it aser when he comes back? Maybe he sold Avodah Zarah. So demeres chachavim ika b'hadei, and he has the value of his chachavim with him. Maybe he also sold Avodah Zarah, and he's coming back with the proceeds, the money of idols. So we say no, probably when it comes to Kachavim, he didn't sell what his Kachavim, he didn't sell his idols, but rather he probably sold something else. Yisrael Nami name what name when we say Emer Glima Zav and Chamer Zav, when we say the same thing by Yisrael. So Iyisa Dahavile Hachahava Mazvanle. So if it was that if that's what it was, then to the Jew he'd sell it too, and therefore we are more strict when it comes to him. So says Rashi, if it's true that he would have had a shirt or a donkey, so then he would have sold that too. And therefore, we assume that probably what ended up happening was he sold the Ovos Kachavim, and therefore we're strict. However, the Akum were not as concerned because he may be less likely to sell his idols. Vahaboyin mutarin. That's only if it's not tied to each other. Once they're tied together, maybe his das was to return. It says Rashi, so if they're not separate but they're all together, so then it becomes aser. So this goes back all the way to, again, Chavtes Amid Beis. So when it comes to the jugs, the kalim of Kachavim, Vikan Kanehem, Vayayin Shel Yisrael, also when it comes to the wine of Yisrael, Kanais Behen Mutter, V'asur Nisur Hana. So we say that it is Asur B'Hana, according to the Shita of Rameir. Chachamim say, Ein Isur Nisur Hana, that there is no Isur Hana when it comes to these things. So we have a Machlokas Rameir and Tanakama, how strict we are with regard to this. So, says the Gemara, so notice of Kachavim Kan Kanem. So talk about Nainais of Kachavim. When we're referring to these kalim that belong to an Oved Kachavim, so it depends. Gerudim Chadashim Mutarin. So Rashi says, Shein Behen Zefes, if it's not tarred, in other words, it's just raw, Vehin Chadashim, and they're new, then it's allowed. Why? The Bechanisas Yayin Zman Muit, if you put in wine just for a small amount of time, then it's not going to have absorbed because it was only there for a small duration of time. Obviously, we're dealing with something such as cheres, which earthenware, pottery, that absorbs immediatly. So we're not mechalek between the wine being there for a short or a long amount of time. Either way, it's still it's going to be also when it comes to kli cheres. So that which we says is mutters dafka by or v'noidais. However, says the Gemara, Yeshanim, if these are older kalim and umzufafin, they are smeared with lime, actually, or either or asurin. Says Rashi, or yishanim o mezufin asurin. Yishanim aydin nachsim hen yain nesach zman meruba. The fact that the wine was there for a long period of time, bola or it's going to absorb into the hide. Mezufafin, it was tarred afil b'chada zimna bola zefes liyayin. That causes it to absorb. Okay. And then the Gemara continues. We're not concerned of yain nesach. The fact that you had this person pour the wine, just as long as you had the Yisrael watching it, even though he did everything else, he tarred it and everything. Nonetheless, the fact that he did this, then it's fine. So you understand what's the difference? A yid, the frumest yid in the world could watch, but if it was the akum that poured the wine, then we should be concerned that it's yain nesach. So how do we understand this? So Amar Papa, you're right. Maybe you have the case like this, that the Ov Chachamim, he was involved in tarring the keli. However, the Yisrael did it. Of course, he's not we're not chayshesh that he was engaged in Avodah Zarah. There's another person watching. So understand. If we trust this yid pouring the wine, why did he need a second Jew to be able to watch him? One should be enough. Because Dilma Agav Tirde Menasech Vlavadaite. Because the guy, even though he's a respected yid, but the reality is, since he's engaged in this process of putting in wine, it's possible that the non-Jew will also pour wine in it, and he's not going to not realize. Okay, so therefore that's the concern. It's like really what we said before. So I want to understand, if we said it before, how do we understand in this case? This makes sense. The time in which he put the wine in, nas kazark mayim latit. It has the same din as like putting water into lime. Says Rashi, shaisin yayin hoyach leibud bezefes, because lime with water becomes like cement. The water becomes non-existent. So too the wine becomes non-existent. Says Rashi, that's what it means. It's hoyach leibud. It disappears in the zefes. Hu batal taimo. It's considered completely batal in its taste. Kamayim hanitnim batit, just like water that's put into mud. Shekon malayan. It basically just becomes something else. The water, there's no water. You have a brick house. There's no water. It's cement. Right? It's something else. Harihin ki'ilu hoyu. It's like it's not here. Avyain zeh kola b'lichluchas hazefes. Due to the zefes, it causes that it's no longer a liquid, and therefore, because of that, it doesn't have the same. It has to have the din of yain nesach. Okay, so that's how we answer this question. So we can actually learn now a pretty interesting din from Rav Zvid. Let's say Rav Chachamim who puts wine into salt that belongs to a Jew. Shari, maybe in that case it's allowed. So Maskav Ravashi Midami, how can you compare this case to putting wine into salt? Hasim Kazul Ibud. Hachal Kazul Ibud. When it comes to the salt, it doesn't dry it up completely, and therefore it still has the tam of yayin in the melach, and therefore, as it doesn't completely dry up, therefore it's still awesome. Question 13. So if they're gehudim, chadashim, mutar, if it's a new kli and it's not tarred, it's fine. If it's old or it was smeared with lime, then it is Aser. TA 15, which may be the exact same question. Elu kankanim shel cheres shel akim ein tzrichim hechsher. Okay, we didn't do that yet. Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Let's keep going. So, bar aditya onus the hanhu zikim Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. So this person who is a merchant, he grabbed away these kalim from Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. Ramba b'hu chamra, so he put water in there. Vadrinhu nila, and he gave it back to him. Wine, he gave him back. He put wine there and gave it back to him. Also, showed him in Russian. He wanted to know what's the status of his kalim. Rabbi Yirmiyah, kachaya ravami halacha l'maisa. What is halacha l'maisa? Mamalayim shloish yamim, that you could fill up a flask with water for 3 days. So marin, just as long as you change the water. So by doing that, that causes whatever was absorbed to get out. You need to change the water basically every 24 hours. Says Rashi, "Behold, gimel yomim ma'aron me'esel eis v'noisen acherim." You can put others in its stead. So savarmi na hanimili didan. I was thinking maybe it's only hours. Says Rashi, "Going hani ziki the Rabbi Yitzchak, his kalim shenivu behen yain kosher tchila." It was actually before he always used it, and already had wine which was kosher absorbed in it. And therefore, there's not enough space, so to speak, in the walls to be able to absorb a tremendous amount of yain nesach. So therefore, maybe that's why we're leaning. Although did who, which is already filled with the yain nesach from the onset, low. No, it doesn't matter. Even if it's their kalim, you can still kasher in this way. So maybe that's only referring to naidais, which are made out of leather. However, when it comes to kankanim, which are shel cheres, in which of course cheres absorbs, maybe not. So even when it comes to kankanim, that would also work. Okay, Tanubam. Kankanim shel chachavim. So when it comes to, again, these jugs, which again are made of cheres, chadashim, if they're brand new, and garudim, and as we said before, they're not tarred, mutarit. Yishanim, if they're old, umuzufafim, or they're tarred, asurin. Avchachavim noisel sechem yayin. Let's say an avcham puts in wine first, and then yisrael noisel sechem mayim, and then the yid puts in wine and water. Avcham noisel sechem yayin. And the avcham puts in wine. Yisrael noisel sechem sir umirius b'enochayshish. You can put in this different types of fish sauce, which causes hechsher from the absorbed yayin nesach. Okay, let's look at question. Well, let's hold off. Okay, iboilu. So the Gemara asks a question as we continue to Lamed Gimel Mebez. L'chadchila diavad, says Rashi, atzir muriaskoi. When we talk about this fish brine, and you put it in there to be able to remove the yain nesach, is this l'chadchila or b'yevid? Toshma, the Tani Reb Zvid bar Oishia, halkoichen kanem v'chachavim. If you purchase these earthenware vessels from an akum, chadashim, if they're brand new, they would hardly put wine in there. Nesasechin yain, noiselosechin yain, wine is put in there. Yishainim, noiselosechin sirumurius l'chatchila. So it says, even l'chatchila, you may do so. So Bamina Rabbi Huda Nasim Rabami, so he asks the kasha. Hechzirin l'kivshan ha'esh v'nis lavnu mahu. Let's say it was put into this fiery furnace and got burnt up. What is the din in that situation? Does that destroy or remove the ayin nesach? So Amalei tzir sayr. We're talking even fish brine has the capacity to remove yain nesach. So orlu koshikain, a fire certainly should be able to. So Rabbi Yochanan, the Yermal Lasam says Rabbi Asim, Rabbi Yochanan, Kankanim Shel Chachavim, Shechsil, Lekivshan Eish, Kivan Shenishu, Zifton, since it removes its pitch, Mahu, Zifton Mehen, Mutar, it becomes Mutar. Amar Vashi, Lo Tema Ad, Denisran, doesn't mean once it's removed, El Afilu Rafoi Mirpa, even if it gets the lime soft, Afal Gab Deloy Nasar Kinsa. Even though Deloy Nasar, even though it was not actually yet removed. Question 14. Gimel Derachim Nemra B'Gemara L'Hachsher Kan Kanim V'Chachavim U'Mayel Akum Kos Pachs Mehen. So this is really what we saw before. So again, either you can fill it up for 3 days and change the water consecutively, or you put it through fire, or we're going to say that you can wait for 12 months. That we didn't see yet, but we're going to get to that. Now TA 15 is the same question. El kan kanim shel cheres shel akam ein sar hechsher. So chadashim gerudim mutarim yishenim o mezufafin then sricha. So that is TA 15, which is this line over here toward the bottom. Kan kanim chadashim gerudim mutarim yishenim mezufafin osurins. This is TA 15 because this is cheres. Okay, TB 16. El kankana shel cheres akum ein sar hechsher ve'el srichen hechsher v'kesan machshiram. So it really asks a lot there. So I wrote yesh hevdel ben chadashim yeshanim gam im zoifafin but sealed or in zofafin v'yochel hechsher. Oh, and I wrote moli mayim gimel yomim. You switch the water 3 days. Ali day or liben o ali day yud beis chaydish v'lo shom shimush mutter. Okay, so that is TB 16, TB 16, and TB 16 over here too. Let me write that. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Let's finish this. Sugya. So kinsa. What's the din when it comes to kinsa? Says Rashi, Hichnas kismin doilkin l'soicha kankanim ad shenishra zaftai. Let's say you heated up little twigs and you stuck it inside the kankan, into this kli, and by doing that it causes the zephas to be removed. So plegi bo ravacha bo ravina chad aser v'chad shari. The hilchos command aser. So says Rashi, why is it aser? V'lo dami l'hachsirin l'kivshan. It's not the same thing as put into a fire. The hasam kivan shehasilkan mimachutz. Once you take it out from outside, ad shenishra zaftan kvar nislabin hacheres. It got all hot. Avahacha kivan shehichnas haor. Once you put it in the fire, miyad zaftu noisher. Okay, so it's not the same thing. How about beer? What if you put it into a beer? Will that do something? So Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda Asri, and Rav Ashar, Ravina Shar, Rav Chia Bered, Rav Yitzchak, Lememra Shichra, to put beer into it. Ozl Rama Bechamra, and then, but instead of beer, they accidentally put wine into it. Feel hachi uchashla lemilsa. Says Rashi, we weren't concerned to be geyser beer to wine, even though we said put in beer, but then they put in wine. Says Rashi, the shichur mavatale watame dechamra, because we know beer removes the taste of wine. So Omer akroi b'almahu was just a mistake. So we're not going to be geyser beer to wine, or wine to beer. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna havile yahanahu ma'ani de pakusna. So he had this kli which was made from animal dung. It says Rashi, shel tzefiyei bakar v'nosno bahen yain nesach. Yain nesach was put into it. So malehu maya, and he put water into it. Anchinhu b'shimsha, it was put in the sun in paku, and the thing burst. Ermoli Rabbi Abba Asirinhu alach isura. I'm going to ask you this issue the oilam. Kleimer ibn al chinam. Your loss was for nothing. Aimer demarabanan malinhu maya. Anuche b'shimshim yamar. All I said was to put it. The chacham instead just put it in the water. You don't have to actually put it on the sun, because by doing that you cause it to get destroyed for no good reason. Amar Rab Yoisna Rav Ami Queen Neser. So when it comes to this particular type of vessel, ein lo tahara lamas. There's no way it could ever become pure from yain nesach, because once it's absorbed, it gets so absorbed into this kli neser, there's nothing to do about it. My kli neser. So Rav Yosi bar Avin, kli shechafayres shel tzrif. It's a kli which was mined from alum. Okay, so a type of material. Debei parzek, rofila. Parzek was the name of a person. Rofila was Sheni Lamelach. He was like the deputy, the second to the king. So, Anus Hani Kubi Mapumadisa. So he had these items from Pumadisa. Ramabahu Chamra, and he put wine into it. Hadrin Hunihilayu, and then he returned it. Also, Shul Rabbi Yehuda, he wanted to know what the status was, because wine was put into his kli. This was something which was only put in for a short amount of time. And since it was only put in for a short amount of time, it didn't really have a chance to fully absorb into the kli, and therefore, meshach shechan b'mayim. All you need to do is rinse it with some water, and that would be enough. Ve'hen mutar. Amra b'vir hani chatzmi shechimi de'aramoy. When it comes to these kalim, kivan deloy boli tuva, because they actually are the opposite. They don't have the capacity to be boileya very well. So again, meshach shechan b'mayim mutarin. All you need to do is a simple rinsing, and that's sufficient. Amra papi havi pasvasa debe mixi. Rashi says it's again here it's klicheres in a particular place where the earth is very hard. Kivan deloy boli tuva, even though it's klicheres, but because the earth comes from a very hard surface, so since it doesn't absorb, again, meshach shechin b'mayim mutar. So be chiddush what's klicheres. Kasim, when it comes to these types of drinking cups, Rashi says kaisha shalcheres, they are made of earthenware. However, machnisin lakim el sheismehen. You just drink from them. You don't keep them in for a long time. You pour into it just for drinking, so it's only in there for a short amount of time. So Rav Asi aser Rav Ashi shari. So there's a machlokas what the din. So isha sebahu avichavim pamrish kliyam lo plidaser. If the first time avichavim drank from it, then there's no question it's usher, because that means there was yain nesa put into it originally. Ki plig b'pam sheni, the second time, because the second time, that's the whole question. Was the akam used in the cup its first usage, or a Jew used it originally, and then the Akum used it for its second or third use, and therefore, because of whatever was absorbed was maybe already absorbed by the Yisrael's wine, and therefore the Akum's wine afterwards didn't have the capacity to be able to absorb because it was such a short amount of time, and also wasn't the first usage. The first two times is Aser, Ki Plig B'Pam Gimel the third time. The halacha like this. The halacha is Pam Rishon Misheni Aser and Gimel Mutter. Amar Zid Haimani de Kunya. We had this in Sachem and many places. You have this clean which was glazed with lead. So it depends. Chiyur v'uchma shari. If it's made white or black, then it's allowed because those don't absorb as much. Yeruka green aser mishum de misr, because it's mixed with earth, and that's what causes it to absorb. As Rashi says, ubali tfei. But there's another important distinction. Islay bahu kartufni kulasiri. If there's cracks in there, b'ka'im, Rashi says, if there's cracks, if it's not smooth, but it has cracks in it, that's also because even the white and black ones will absorb. Darsh marim or kunya bin uchba bin chiyura bin yurka, it doesn't matter what color it is, shari. We're always lenient. So ma'ishna mechametz b'pesach. How is this different than when it comes to chametz and pesach? The bomine maremer hanimani the kunya mahu eshtimushi b'hu b'pischa. What's the din? Can you use these on Pesach? Because maybe there's chametz absorbed. So we said Yeruka woti boilach the misarfi uboli. Certainly the green ones, because as we said, it uses earth, and therefore because of that, it's mixed with this earth which absorbs. Therefore v'yasiri. Kiti boilach. The whole machlokes, the whole question is chiyur v'uchmi, white and black. So we said also over there. Ki isbuhu kartufni loti boilach devadi boli v'asiri. If there's cracks in it, it's definitely going to be asr. Ki tiboilach dishi mai. What if it's smooth? So that's the whole question over there. So Amr lahu, as we continue Lamed Amud Aleph, Anachazin lahu lemediasi, says Rashi, I saw mizian, the moisture, tipenehim and b'chutz machmas b'yasan, that even the outside of the kli is moist because it's absorbed inside. Kivan dimidaisi vadi boli v'asiri. The fact that we can see this moisture, it's a problem, it's aser. My taima, hatayra ha'ida kli cheres. The Torah basically testifies regarding earthenware vessel, sheni yotzim midi daifnul oilam, that it doesn't remove, you cannot be pilot that which is absorbed into such a kli. So ma'ishna miyayin nesach didarish lahu meremer kuhu mani dekunya shari. When it comes to yayin nesach, we say that all of these kalim are lenient. So maybe that's the distinction, because we're more strict by chametz because it's a din deraisa. Abaha kol the tikkun rabban came deraisa tikkun. We shouldn't make a distinction even by din derabanan. So the answer is zet tashmishu b'chamin v'zet tashmishu b'tzainin. Here's a very important distinction. Chametz, it absorbed because it was hot, and therefore something which is hot heats up the kli and it's able to absorb more into that kli. However, yain nesach, because it's just wine, so therefore because of that, it doesn't have the capacity to absorb as quickly, and therefore we are more lenient. Ad kan.